Welcome to Doing the Dang Thing podcast. I am your host, Jill Schmeeding, and this podcast is all about helping everyday women like yourself play big and aspire for more. The topic that I am going to be diving into today, I think, is a great way to play big in your life. It's very, very important. And being that I have had a career, a pretty long career in finance, I've learned a few things. And you might be saying, what kind of finance? I always forget to tell people that. So the finance that I've been working in as a career is helping people save for retirement, live a very well life in retirement, and of course, not run out of money in retirement. That is the whole point, right? So that's kind of the personal finance that I've been working in as a career. And there are a few things that I can honestly say that I've learned along the way. And I talk to women in life, I talk to women, and some of them are like, man, I don't know the first thing about finance, and I don't know the first thing about money management and what's important. And, that's a big conversation that I'm going to not necessarily get in today, but there is one thing that I want to touch on that I do think is important. And I'm bringing it to you right now. The ladies out there, anyone who says, I don't know what to do, this is one thing you can do. And I'm practicing what I preach, taking my own medicine here, because I'm doing it for myself. And that's why I wanted to share. I feel like this is a way to play big. And that is to have a will. Have a will, okay? A will and testament. And you might be wondering, what exactly is a will or testament? That's a great question. It's a legal document that expresses a person's wishes as to how their property is to be distributed after their death, and to which person is to manage the property until its final distribution. Okay? So a will tell others how you want your property to be distributed, and it will also explain who is going to be the person distributing those assets. And again, like I said, this is a great way to play big as a woman, because it's important to take care of everything you've worked so hard for in your life. And this is going to be super high level, because I don't want to get into the weeds, actually, if I'm being honest with you. And I think there are so many different rules and regs that go along with, when I say regs, I mean regulations that go along with this. And every state is so different. And I'm in Colorado, and to be honest with you, I don't even know what that means. I don't know what that means. I'm not an estate planner, estate planning attorney. But I do know this. There are resources out there where you can learn more. And one of those resources that I am going to tell you about today that is helping me create my will, or redo my will, because I created one about 20 years ago. And if I'm being honest with you, what I had going on 20 years ago is so different than what I have going on today. And so I want to redo my will. There is an amazing website out there that is called trustandwill.com. Trustandwill.com. I am not associated with these people in any way, shape, or form, other than I heard about them through my job. And it's a great website. It's inexpensive to create a will. For like $160, you can create a will. And also, because I created my own will and paid for that $160, I got a 10% off coupon for family and friends. And so I'm going to put that in the show notes as well. So that takes it down just a little bit more. And I'm also going to link an article in the show notes from Trust and Will's website that is titled Dying Without a Will, What Happens? Because I do think that's the number one question, or maybe it is number two question, what is a will? Why do I need it? But what's going to happen if I don't have a will? And so I'm going to briefly, because the article does such a great job, and I encourage you to just go read the article to get it right from the horse's mouth. But here I'm just going to touch on a few things, which might actually lead to more questions. And I think that's why it's important to have the website as a reference. Okay. So, number one, what's going to happen if you don't have a will? Well, when you pass away, all of your assets are frozen. Bank accounts, investment accounts, that sort of thing. Makes it really hard to pay for things like your funeral. And so, having a will, you appoint an executor, somebody, a sibling or a friend or a parent or something like that. Most likely not a parent per se, but it could be, to take over and take care of distributing your assets. And it just cuts down on the amount of time that it takes to unfreeze your assets and start getting the money flowing again, right? And start distributing those assets to the people that are supposed to be getting them according to your will. So it just really helps things get moving faster. The number two reason of why it's important to have a will, or what happens if I don't have a will, which I know are two different questions, but these answers kind of answer both of them. If you don't have a will, and why it's important to have a will is because assets won't necessarily end up where you want them if you don't have a will. The cool thing is, in your will, you're going to actually decide who gets what. And I have a perfect example. My mom collects antiques, and some of those antiques have already been passed down to me. Like, she's actually given them to me. Or my grandparents actually is a better example because they're passed away. My grandma gave me a certain antique that I personally really love to have. And there's someone in my family, younger generation, that I want to have that antique to let it continue on after I pass away. I'm going to put that in my will. So there's no question. It's not just going to be like, oh, who gets this? And someone raises their hand and that person gets it. And it's not who I wanted to have it. Another really important reason to have a will is if you're a parent. And I'm not a parent, and so this is not something that I necessarily need to think about. But if you are a parent and you don't have a will, please consider getting one as soon as possible. The children's rights are put into the hands of the court if you don't have a will. And the state judges do their best to do what's in the best interest of the child and give that child to, whether that be the surviving parent or guardian, but they don't know family dynamics. And, we all have interesting family dynamics. And so it's really important that in your will, you decide who is going to take care of your children if you pass away unexpectedly. That's very, very important. And I come across so many women who are mothers that don't have a will. And I think that's probably one of the most important things that you need to do before you try to dive into having investments and all those it's all important, but just make sure you have a will. And this service on trustandwill.com makes it super easy. Another couple things that I want to talk about, because again, this was super high level and I just wanted to go through, why it's important to have a will or what happens if I don't have a will, which I've already covered. Another couple tips that I just wanted to go into on this podcast episode is having beneficiaries on all of your accounts. Okay. And you say, what's a beneficiary? A beneficiary is the person who's entitled to those assets after you pass away. And there's a couple different ways to put beneficiaries on your account. So if you have a 401k at your job, you can have a beneficiary on that account so that when you pass away, that 401k money goes to the beneficiary. You have to sometimes dig a little deep to find where you put those beneficiaries, but they are there. So I would encourage you to have a beneficiary. Another thing that you can do if you have an account that is non-IRA, okay, because any IRA account, IRA, Roth IRA, those types of things, they're all going to ask you for a beneficiary. So that's kind of a given. And so IRAs are super easy. Once you pass away, boom, we contact the beneficiaries and we open an accounts for them and they get their assets. Super easy, super important. But let's just say you have a non-IRA account. So just an account in Jill Schmeeding's name only. It's called a taxable account. And I won't get into why it's called a taxable account, but that's what they're called. A workaround to that is putting something, and bank accounts can have this too. They call it a little bit different But we, in the investment side of things, in the finance side of the world, we call it TOD, transfer on death, TOD. And that's really important. If you have an account out there that is not a retirement account, that is just in your own name, I highly encourage you to have TOD on that account. And that will bypass everything, actually. So if you having a will, like that's having the will is really important. But if you have a TOD on your non-IRA, non-retirement account, investment account, like a Schwab or a TD Ameritrade or, Vanguard or wherever you have your investments, when you pass away, we immediately contact the beneficiaries on that TOD account, on that individual account, and we give them their assets. It's the most easiest thing in the entire world. At least in most cases, it's super, super easy. So I encourage you to make sure you have beneficiaries on your accounts. That's just a really, really easy way to take care of your assets and make sure they go where you want them to go when you pass away. So I can encourage you to look into that wherever you hold your assets. So as I mentioned, I'm in the process of updating my will. I would encourage you to set some time. How do they say that? It's going to take you a little bit of time to work through creating your will, because it does make you think about things, right? It does actually give you an option to say, do you have any gifts that you want to give anyone, like an automobile that you love, or your home, or any sort of memorable items. And I have a few of those. I have like a ring that I want someone in my family to have when I pass away, because the ring means a lot to me. And I think this person would actually value it and continue to wear it for generations to come, right? At least that's the hope anyways. And so it gives you a spot to do that. It also gives you a spot to write out what you want your funeral to be like. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? Do you want to be your body donated to science? That was a question that I actually kind of had to mull over. I said cremated because I think that's what, I don't know, people in my family would want. Oh my God, why am I being a people pleaser when it comes to this? I might change it to being a donated to science, but you never know what the world's going to have in the future for that sort of stuff. But yeah, it makes you think about all those things. And I put down songs that I wanted to have at my funeral, the place where I would love to have my funeral. Now that could change, obviously, if I live for another 40 to 50 years, whatever that looks like, that might change. But there are places where I don't want to have a funeral. And if I don't write it down, no one will ever know, right? And you might be thinking, you're going to be dead, so it doesn't really matter. You're right. But in the end, it's kind of how I want to be remembered. And as of now, how I want to be remembered. And I think that's really important. So that's all I've got for you today. I am going to put, like I said, a link to the article in the show notes. I encourage you to go read it, read through other articles on that website, trustandwill.com, because it's very informative and it will get you started thinking about how to, make sure everything is in order for your life financially, right? And this is just one tip. Step number 1, how to play big as a woman financially. I got you covered. So go set some time to go through this. You won't regret it. I applaud you for playing big and telling your kids about this too, right? Just informing them, depending on what their age are. Maybe it's important for them as well. Like my mom did for me so many years ago. I love that my mom told me to open a Roth IRA and start investing at like a super young age. That was one of the best decisions she could have ever told me. That's a topic for another day. And she also told me, create a will and get it going. And I've had one for 20 years now, and I'm going to get it updated. And I encourage you to, the service offers everything, by the way. Trust and Will offers everything. It will do everything from start to finish for you. So yeah, what a cool little service. And I hope that the 10% off coupon helps you pull the trigger and make it happen. So thanks for tuning in today. I really appreciate you. This is the Doing the Dang Thing podcast. I'm your host, Jill Schmeeding, and way to play big.